reveille, donks.
Look at us now, tip to tip. This is our life. This is our passion. That's the spirit we bring to this show.
I'm Luke Thomas.
I'm Brian Campbell.
This is Morning Kombat.
I think I used the old intro, BC.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good here, Luke. I'm just coming to terms with the end of Sean Strickland and Chris Curtis's friendship, but luckily you and I are still working together just great, Luke. Okay.
What did you see? What happened?
I just found this on Twitter. Apparently, it's been going on for a while. I'm not sure the roots beyond the fact that Sean Strickland says absolute bullshit often, but we'll find out maybe more. That's not one of our lead stories today. Our lead story today, Luke, is free 99. MK's back, baby. Yeah.
Right.
Woo!
So free MK Friday. It doesn't cost you anything to watch, and we don't get paid. So it's quite a nice deal for everyone. Thank you
Luke,
for joining us.
can I become a lord or a leered by drinking this green drink right here? I can't really figure it out, you know.
You pay me enough, I'll tell you can become anything. How about that? Just give me some
I love
cash.
when people are like, BC's such a hypocrite. He'll sell anything. Yeah, guys, I will. All right. Try to keep the lights on. You got to choose yourself whether you want to buy it. Okay.
Yeah. The other part is kids got to go to college. So
yeah. Two kids need shoes. So get away from me. Thank you. All right. Great to be back at it.
The weigh-ins are going on as we speak for UFC 304. So today, a big UFC 304 preview. Appreciate everyone joining us. We'll also get to some of the news that broke yesterday. We had known it was coming, but it was made official September 14th. Not just UFC 306, but of course, Canelo at the T-Mobile Arena is going to be fighting Edgar Berlanga, a fight that I can say quite confidently that the only people who want that are Canelo and a small cadre of Canelo fans. That's it. Shocking.
Probably Berlanga and his manager Luke as well. Okay, that's
right. Fair enough. And according to Dan Rayfield, this is an 8-figure deal for them. So, significant amount of money for them, which I understand. But I don't think anybody else wants it. Also, BC, I want to point out, after the fight with Munguia, and we had known even before the fight with Munguia, but after the fight with Munguia, you and I were talking, and I was like, he's fighting Berlanga next. You're like, no way, not gonna happen. No chance. You sure about that?
Luke, in the immortal words of Cheech and Chong, what balls he has, Luke. I mean, good Lord, Big Red's just like, hey, fans, hey, critics out there. All right. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Let's remind everyone, it is the 26th of July. BC, I believe, if I am not mistaken, it was your birthday yesterday. Feliz cumpleaños.
Thank you for the social love, Luke. I don't deserve that. I showed up
right,
on the
you don't.
On the Mike Heck show yesterday on my birthday to go head to head with that dirt hole Jed Meshew. I had a great time. But yeah, what a great birthday, Luke.
Did you do anything special for your birthday?
Yeah, we went out for Mexican food. I had a carne asada chimichangas, which were fantastic. And I'm so old, Luke. The margarita I drank gave me a pounding headache within a half hour because I'm old as F. But watched a family movie. I mean, it was great. Good times, great oldies. I really feel good at this age because no matter how slowly or quickly my body is decrepifying, my mind is still conveniently in that age 19 to 22 range, Luke. So I'm still doing well. All right.
You're emotionally immature, but physically quite old.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, very, very much.
What's going on? What's going on your face?
Wow, that's a loaded question, Luke. Are you talking about the multicolored skin tones that I offer around this area, or like Luke Thomas, the multicolored facial hair that I'm bringing to the table?
The latter.
I was trying some form of a goatee under the threat to my wife that I may for the first time do the handlebar mustache, which my dad employed full-time in the 80s. I'm thinking about it, Luke. Early preview. What do you think?
You look like someone who actually grew a full beard and then blew fireworks up in your face, and it took like weird parts of it away.
Okay, well, this dark color is au natural. And, if you're wondering if the drapes match the curtains, look, a little too personal for a Friday. Okay, a little too
super not doing that at all. But okay,
nothing
BC.
Quite like a shaved scrotum, Luke. It's quite breathtaking, to be fair. It's an Austin Powers joke. I didn't want to be that gross. All right, but yeah, there you go.
Maybe we do need to split like Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland. Maybe.
Well, we had a good run, Luke. About time I open up that YouTube channel people are requesting, right? Yeah, here we go. All BC all the time, baby.
BC, anything else we need to let the folks know about? Oh, yes, there is a couple of things here before we get going. I want to remind the good folks out there, of course, You know who we are. Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell. We appreciate all of that. There is merch available. You can go to morningcombat.store. You can use the code LIVE10 for whatever the fuck is up there. We don't really have meetings anymore, so I don't really know how to answer what even the fuck we have or what we're doing.
What's the status of Morning Combat? It's Luke and I right now. That's the status of it. Okay, that's about it. Yeah.
It's just us and you guys, really, and well, quite a bit of sadness that I'm holding inside. And then on top of it, BC, we have some social you just fucking follow us. I mean, who cares at this point?
Just freaking do it. I am excited to give the people what they deserve, which is a real, detailed UFC 304 preview today. Yes, despite our jokes, are we still aiming toward this goal future of returning back to where we
don't even bring that shit up. I mean,
no, I bring it up to say pregame preview is going to come back. All these things we used to do, we're still piecemealing right now, but I'm excited to give this to the people for free. They deserve it, Luke. They don't want to hear any more about Jake Paul, apparently. So why don't we talk about some good stuff? You know what I mean? That's what I'm here to do. I'm excited. Look, I've been in the art studio. Do you want to see the results so you can judge me?
Please.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. I've been told by one of my family members this is the best one yet. Only you can decide, Luke.
All of these look racist. All of these.
There's nothing at all racist about this.
It's definitely a psychedelic boat dream kind of thing.
I mean, I can't speak to my toxicology results during the making of this, but maybe you can, Luke. Okay. All right. And then this other one's not finished. It needs a facelift, but I'm building something here. What are your thoughts, Luke?
Yeah, the other one's better.
Okay.
The other one's better.
Thank you.
The other one is a little bit more interesting. That one just looks like, yeah, no, that one's terrible.
Looks like
that
the end
chilly.
of Chris Curtis and Sean Strickland's friendship, obviously. Yeah. Luke, you're right there. Yeah, there you go.
All right, BC, with that in mind, UFC 304 is tomorrow. We do have some assets we're going to play throughout the course of this breakdown. But just first things first, it's the return to Manchester. It is late in the morning. I will say it does seem like it's very important for the UK market. 2 fights at the top of the card in your main and co-main that are technically rematches of fights that never really got out of first gear, basically, in both cases. So let me just start with the question that I like to start with pay-per-views. Your level of anticipation, and are you more looking forward to the main event or the co-main event, not just for the fight itself, but for what it could mean?
Definitely the co-main event. In fact, I think you can argue that it could or even should be the main event, and that's not a aimed disrespect at Leon Edwards, who is, headlining his 4th straight pay-per-view, his 2nd in his last 3 fights on UK soil. So what is my expectation level? I've come around a lot on this card. I was sort of stuck in my, it's not the same as it used to be, Luke, stretch about the UFC, but I can't let that blind me from the good things coming. And while I said, hey, man, this card feels very UK aimed, that's true. I still really like it. My anticipation level, I'd say, is about a 7.8 out of 10. I'm really excited about the top 3 fights on this card, along with a couple other piecemeal. But Luke, I'm focusing on that co-main event. I've come around to the idea that this is going to be contested in hindsight for the real undisputed championship, even though this is an interim title fight. I no longer believe that John or Stipe will fight again unless Stipe pulls an upset and we have a need for an immediate rematch. So I do look at this as future star in the making, Tom Aspinall, back on home soil. Can he redeem the only loss of his career, for as weird as it was? And can he continue to show us, Luke, that he just might be heavyweight 2.0 and really a lot of ways the future of this sport? Those are sort of the things I'm focused on and excited about. I'm not really into Edwards versus Belal on the level of a lot of my compadres in the MMA game. Are you, Luke?
I'm actually more into it than I thought I would be. A lot of people are really mad at Belal Muhammad, but he's made this a grudge match in ways that it would never have been otherwise. It's not like Leon is answering some of the things that Belal is doing, but he's not like going out of his way to make it a grudge match in that particular way. But certainly Belal is doing everything possible to try and frame this contest as something personal, and he's got some kind of personal vendetta. And how much of that is marketing, how much of that is him psyching himself up for a very difficult challenge, probably all of part of column A, column B. Either way, you're getting something that is ratcheting up the tension in a way that it wasn't really there before. Also, it does kind of feel like it's an interesting crossroads moment for Edwards. If he wins this contest, having beaten Usman, having beaten Colby, now having beaten Belal, amidst everyone else he's beaten, but I mean, like, in this more recent title run of his, then you get to a part where you're like, okay, I definitely want to see the Shavkat fight, but he may need one more contender fight. But of course, he and his coaches have been talking about potentially going to 185 and what that might mean up there as well. And so it's a bit of a interesting moment in the fight game for the king of the welterweights as it stands. But basically, BC, I'm with you. I think the co-main event is significantly more interesting, in part because we only got 15 seconds of the first fight. And what it could mean for the division is so, so big. Again, Aspinall versus John Jones, if we ever get there, and again, I'm very skeptical that we do, but if we end up getting to that, is such an important fight. It's such a huge fight. It's such a great fight. Who is an MMA fan who doesn't want to see that, for crying out loud? Or conversely, if Aspinall loses and Blaydes is the one to ascend, that has a deep ripple effect on down the line as well. So for me, it's the co-main event that is more interesting, but I do think that there's a lot of value in those fights. Also, Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze, I like a lot. Nathaniel Wood versus Daniel Pineda is going to be a lot of fun. King Green versus Paddy Pimblett. There's a lot of fun things on this card. I actually feel like it's going to be pretty good.
Luke, I just want to remind people that not only does Tom Aspinall have a 100% finishing rate, he's won all 7 of his UFC fights outside of that Blaydes contest. Luke, he's never been past the second round, and only one UFC fighter has even taken him to the second round. So I bring that not only to play up how good Aspinall might end up being, but also, Luke, we still don't really know a ton about him as a UFC fighter. When you consider how quickly he has gotten in there, think of the Volkov fight and just taken people apart and finished them. Trivia question: who is the only UFC fighter to take him past round 1? Luke, go.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Andrei Arlovsky, surprisingly enough. But do you have any of that feeling? I don't want to jump the gun on our preview here, but do you have any of that same feeling that as much as I want to see if Aspinall really is as good as he looks, I also potentially want to see what it looks like in round 4 or 5 against a wrestler in Blaydes should we get there? There's some questions that we need answering.
I agree with that, but let's save that for the co-main event analysis. So with that in mind, let's kick it into high gear for this main event. I'm looking up the odds as we have them now, BC. DraftKings, our friends at DraftKings, although this is not a DraftKings show. I want to point that out. This is just two idiots.
Was this a Bet Rivers show, Luke? Or are we not allowed to speak other names?
This is a Bet Sadness show. DraftKings has Leon Edwards as a minus 250. They've got Belal Muhammad as a plus 205. It's really hard to know. Someone asked me this yesterday, BC, and I don't have a great answer for it, which is, okay, are people sleeping on Belal? And the reality of MMA is you're only dealing with a very limited amount of information before a fight takes place. Is either guy injured? Are they having a bad weight cut? Or blah, blah, blah. Even if they make it, do they make it by the skin of their teeth? Is there something that could derail them? Are they going to get an injury the first 30 seconds of a fight? Like, you name it. There's a lot of different ways this could go. But it is a little bit hard to see what I would call an obvious path for Belal Muhammad. And by that, I mean, you've got a Leon Edwards who was never necessarily the best defensive wrestler, but was always pretty good. But through the Kamaru Usman crucible, and then obviously you saw it in the Colby Covington fight and other ones as well, he's really become a very good defensive wrestler, very good cage wrestling, very good sprawl. He does take some risks, and sometimes that gets him into trouble, but in the end, he still gets his hand raised more often than not, and of late, very, very well against guys who have decorated wrestling backgrounds. Of all the times for Belal Muhammad to be fighting a guy like Leon, it feels like you're getting him still less than 35 years of age and post all of this experience. Never say never. MMA is crazy. But BC, my kind of thought is it's an uphill climb for Belal. I think it's doable, but not straightforward.
Luke, I was called a Belal Muhammad hater by Jed Meshew II yesterday. I mean, do we need to add the second on, Luke? Are we worried about that there's another Jed Meshew out there just, growing his hair long and belly flopping into pools? No. But I want to kind of ask you some of these devil's advocate questions to find out if I am a hater or not. Luke, first and foremost, Belal's 36. Does that alone, in your wicked theory of statistical domination in the end of one's life and career post 35 welterweight and below, doesn't that excuse him from winning this fight?
No, because the two examples of it happening at 170 and below are at 170.
Okay,
right?
that's
It
a
is
fair
like
response, but
170 is the tweener. 170 is if someone is going to pull it off, it's not in all likelihood not going to be at 135. It's going to be at 170. And also, Belal looks to be in absurd physical condition for this
no, I'll
fight. I
give
do
him
take
that.
that
Look,
seriously.
the thing about Belal is like, for whatever he lacks in the ability to sell himself on the mic and maybe lacking one dominant offensive skill that has allowed critics like me to be very late to the party and understanding that the sum of his parts are elite and that he does sort of belong here. Um, Things like cardio, things like toughness, I do rate him very high. But Luke, for whatever you want to gauge that when these two first met, 2 years ago, we got a round in about 10 seconds out of it. I mean, true or false, Luke, when you go back and watch the tape, Leon was piecing him up over the 5.5 minutes of this fight that we saw. In fact, cutting the side of his head with a high kick that rocked him, routinely landing clean 1-2s, and never ending up on his back. Luke, true or false?
True. And in fact, that open side head kick is one that has been a continuous problem for Belal Muhammad. Absolutely. I mean, that's the other part too. It's like, if he's going to win, it has to be through wrestling or in all likelihood, just contained space and then high volume work rate. Because if he stands at range with Leon and gives Leon room to set up, gives him room to throw, gives him room to exit, that doesn't seem like a super winnable fight. Now, BC, there might be some challenge to that. Belal's coach had said they're really working on his boxing.
Oh, dude, this is a whole separate topic. The delusion of Belal and team this week is a whole separate topic.
Let's play because I do think it dovetails with this. We'll come back to you. We'll play it and let's get your reaction.
His hands, they're really, really good right now. They're sharp, they're fast. We got him the Mexican boxing style. If you guys watch Canelo, Marquez, all those guys, Belal has the hands like that right now. So Leon better be ready for that.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time.
BC, your reaction.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's going to have to improve. Hopefully they watched the crap out of the first 5 minutes against Leon a couple years ago, and hopefully they realized how much a guy who's known for coming forward and putting on pressure was forced to constantly back up and never was seemingly in range to land anything of significance and was getting pieced up by those 1-2s that I hope he was focusing exclusively on this strength, the same strength that he used to wear down and stop Sean Brady, which I think is his best win up to this point. But to come out with a clip like this during fight week and be like, oh yeah, just like Canelo and Marquez, guys, you'll see. I was told that Mike Perry was going to box Jake Paul on even terms too by some people, Luke. You know what I mean? Look, can we get to reality on this, please?
Yeah, I will say there's a way to interpret what he said as we've given him a Mexican boxing style versus his hands are on par with that kind of fighter. You can kind of dispute that, but also like a Mexican fighter stands right in front of you and swings heavy combos. I think he could get away with that after pressing someone up against the fence. But if he does that in open space, that seems like a really, really bad idea. A very, very surefire way to get hurt and knocked out. Leon is clever with his setups, thoughtful with his execution, patient with his setups as well. Yeah, I don't know about that. That seems even a more charitable interpretation of it doesn't fill you with great confidence, I guess is the point I would make. BC, if we're looking at their win streaks to get here, I just want to point this out. Edwards, having 5 fights ago, he had the draw, or whatever you want to call it, the no contest, I should say, against Belal Muhammad, then the win over Nate Diaz, then the 2 wins over Kamaru Usman, and then Colby Covington shitting the bed. If you go back to Belal Muhammad and BC, I really feel like there are things you can point to that, somewhat undercut the value of these names, but this is a hell of a win streak. I mean, Belal has absolutely earned this opportunity. A win over Demian Maia, a win over Wonderboy Thompson, a win over Vicente Luque, a win over and a finish over Sean Brady, and then Gilbert Burns. I know Burns was injured. Brady was somewhat overwhelmed and not necessarily showing the best striking. Luque obviously is not, he's a little bit shop worn. Same with Thompson, and Maya's a little bit long in the tooth, but those are not bullshit names. Those are all good names.
I'm not going to say that he doesn't belong here, but to continue my run of devil's advocate questions to find out whether I'm just hating on him in the same way, to be fair, that I missed the Leon experience. I did not think Leon was ready for prime time. The combination of things that have happened, including him getting rocked by Nate Diaz, including him getting beat up backstage and doing nothing about it by Masvidal, including like, right, all these things that happened in a row where we're like, man, Leon's not the dude. Just give him his title shot already so he can John Fitch his way in and out of the title picture to just get it over with. I was wrong. Leon, to his credit, has turned into one of the best fighters on the planet. But I don't really think I'm wrong on Belal. So here's the deal, Luke. I give him credit for the wins he's had. I give him credit for always overcoming, despite never getting really a big push from the company and having critics constantly sort of downgrade his chances. He's surprised me. His intangibles are strong. But I want to ask you this, Luke. If he didn't get poked in the eye in that first fight, I don't think he's in this spot. I don't think he ever gets here, because even though the Gilbert Burns win looks nice, there's elements around that I think bring it down. I've never seen Belal Muhammad beat an A-level guy, and I think he's going in there now against an A/A+ guy in Leon Edwards. Even though you can look at that resume and be impressed with, look, he got past the veterans he needed to, the Mayas, the Wonder Boys, like you mentioned. The Sean Brady one was a big one. I just, I'm not going to take that away from him. But I think he almost benefited in a way from not being a company favorite, that he has lingered in this title picture, missing big opportunities. Never really his fault. But I think when you consider, Luke, that the title picture was very bottlenecked by Usman, Masvidal, Covington, and Edwards all fighting each other in consecutive title bouts multiple times, where he never got his opportunity because he wasn't that favored son. And now it kind of worked out perfectly when the seas have parted, where everybody else that was a contender is kind of old and on the way out, like all those names I just mentioned. Shavkat, for whatever reason, is not getting his opportunity now, probably because Belal's been here longer. And Belal never had to go through Shavkat. He went through a diminished Burns. So, Luke, what I'm trying to say was, if he had gone through a requisite A-level guy to be in position for a title, I'm just not confident he would have gotten there. Is that me being a hater, or is that not a crazy notion?
He's definitely finding this opportunity at a more opportune moment. I can agree with that. Hard to say if it would never happen. I think that's a little strong. I don't know if there's evidence.
I mean, you got lucky Chimaev didn't work out. Did he not, Luke? You got lucky Chimaev had to move up. Like, it kind of just perfectly parted for him.
Again, I don't think that that's totally wrong, but when you say, like, but for this, it would not have happened, someone has to be, in my judgment, really lacking in talent, and I don't think that's the case here. I do think there are a set of fortuitous circumstances that have built to this position, but also he had to beat, like, what was he, a 10-fight win streak he had to go on?
10-fight unbeaten streak is on, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an absurd level of work he had to do. I know what you're saying. It's ultimately, you've not seen an A-plus performance out of this guy against an A-plus kind of guy. That, to me, is indisputably true. There's really no question about that. But would it not have happened but for this and that? Maybe. I can't say it's wrong. It just feels a little bit strong to me, if I could be honest with you.
Can I tell you my issue with Belal this week?
Please.
I feel like he's out of character. No, I don't know Belal. I don't claim to know Belal, right? I've seen interviews. I've never had I don't believe I've had the chance to interview him, but I've been around him like anybody else in the media space. I've always respected him. I feel like what he has really done great was keep grinding despite the obstacles or the lack of, people wanting him in this spot. He's leaned on his strength. He's gone out there and just got it done. He's always been available. He always works hard. It's not his fault he's finally getting this title shot because, at 36 now, it's sort of, again, things happen the way they did. But Luke, I always looked at him as humble, hardworking. I love to see the support he has for Palestine and his descendants there, and he's doing charitable efforts. But this week, like you mentioned off the top of the show, it not only feels like he's so aggressively trying to be that arriving foreign villain on the home fighter's soil, and he's going to prove everybody wrong. I feel like he's going to almost desperate lengths to try to convince himself ultimately that he does belong here. And it just, to me, is coming off as not confident. What I would have liked for him, and again, it may not matter. Sometimes we focus on things like press conferences, I'll get to in a second, that really don't play into the fight at all. But sometimes they do, though, which is why we bring it up when we fill hours on podcasting. I would have preferred it more if he came in and said, yeah, say what you want about me, but you're going to remember my name after Saturday. I've been counted out every time before, and I'm going to come here and do me and do what I do, and we're going to see. Instead, he's been, from the coach saying he's got Canelo hands to, do we have the clip? the GSP Belal clip or no?
The GSP Belal clip?
Yeah.
Oh,
about
on
where-
wrestling? On wrestling?
No, on where he'll be in the all-time welterweight rank.
No, I don't have that one.
Then I hear Belal come out and say publicly that, you know, when he beats Leon, he'll be considered the second greatest welterweight of all time behind GSP because Edwards beat Usman twice. So that is the MMA math he's leaning on. Wait, what? And then, Luke, to see him at the press conference, I mean, look, it was cornball shit. It was not ready for prime time. He didn't have the right one-liners to come back with. I felt like he should have read the room in the first
but you
few
can make the
minutes.
same argument against Ilya Taporia. Then he goes out there and fucking smokes Volk.
Okay,
Like, what does that mean?
I can make the same argument about Eddie Alvarez against Conor too, where he just ended up getting so overwhelmed and so sucked in on this thing rather than focusing on his game. I'm a little bit worried about Belal overall, and it bleeds into what I saw from the elevator situation. Do we have that video to play?
Yes, but you have to give me a second to pull it up. Go ahead and set it up, please.
So as we have found out, Belal ended up in his team in the same elevator as Leon Edwards at the Fighter Hotel, I believe. But before that video arrived on UFC Embedded, it was Belal doing interviews specifically with MMA Junkie where he talked about what happened, and that became the narrative until we saw ultimately the video here.
I'm having trouble finding it. You got to give me a second. Sorry, dude. I got
I'll
a million.
give you a second. I'll give you a second here. So, you know, I'm not trying to be a Belal hater. I'm just trying to say that this week I really just, I don't know. I felt like he's forcing it. And not everybody has the trash talking shtick ability. We've seen it fall flat. Have we seen guys still win fights? Like, yeah, you're going to have to decide for yourself. But what I saw was a little bit of fish out of water for this guy ultimately in the end. And I do wonder what that means here, Luke.
Let me just ask though, like, isn't, okay, so this is the central tension that you always see in fights, which is what is the distinction between a fighter being delusional to the point where they are, where it's like off-putting, and then delusional to the point where you have to do that to raise your level of confidence to even perform. Because I got to tell you, you're seeing it like he's going over the top, and I'm seeing it like he's trying to raise his game when the stakes are the highest. Again, it's all phony. We can all agree there. It's all manufactured. The question is there actually a value to what is being manufactured? And I can't believe I can't find this goddamn clip, but go ahead.
Well, I could set up the clip and just say what happened, Luke, ultimately for anybody that hasn't seen it.
Yeah, I don't know where the fuck this thing is.
Belal basically came out on MMA Junkie and said, look, we ran into the elevator together. Leon was shook. He was scared. He didn't want to say anything. His team spoke for him. And then Luke even went the extra level and said, look, Leon also looks a little bit autistic, by the way, in terms of how he talks.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
We had this vision of what we thought the standoff was. And then you see the video. And again, there's not much here. But Luke, you saw the video, correct?
Yes,
Leon
I did
comes
see it,
in.
yes.
He's kind of loosely, funly in a way, talking trash to him, and remember the name, and it looked like Belal, who was like, looked a little fish out of water, a little like, oh, I'm supposed to act really tough here, so I'm going to tell you that it smells like vagina in here. Again, Luke, I'm just saying, after hearing his build up, then watching the video and adding all of these other videos together, I'm fearing disillusionment for him. Maybe this, like you're saying, everyone is different in how they're wired. I find out I get sent to hell on the basketball court when I poke the wrong bear, Luke. We've talked about this, but I do it because I got to find out what people are made of and who I can take advantage of. I'm just looking at this guy wondering if this is who he was on the way up and this is how he got here. This is going to be a tough matchup for him. Go rewatch that first fight, Luke. It reminds you of that.
I do have this clip, which does bleed into what you're talking about, which is Leon commenting on what he believes is Belal's inflated sense of self.
I think everyone knows his game plan would be to come out and try wrestling. But even his wrestling ain't all that really. You know what I mean? You ain't a fucking Khabib or like a GSP. It's Belal. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. Let's see.
I mean,
he seems undeterred.
Let's take all of this and stare it back into the fight, and I'll set it up like this. He might be right. I don't know. I mean, certainly he's not Khabib, but he might be right. A lot of people are talking about, well, if Belal takes him down, blah, 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 it could be a different fight. And maybe it would be if he can continually do that. But, Luke, you painted a interesting picture off the top with the whole idea of I'm not really finding a path to victory here, and neither am I, because Belal is a balanced, well-rounded guy. To give him credit, he does seamlessly work his striking into wrestling and the threat of all of that. But if Edwards is just off of 2 fights against Usman, which he won, and then beating Colby Covington, who really his only true elite skill is exactly that, taking you down, and he didn't spend the whole fight on his back in trouble, I'm like you. Unless Belal is coming out here with a very aggressive boxing strategy and he has elevated his game to a point that we haven't seen yet, I don't know how he's going to beat Leon. I don't know how this is not going to be 49-46 Edwards across the board.
Yeah, just to clarify, my argument was not that I don't see a path. I don't see an obvious path. What I mean by that is, usually, even for example, in the Blaydes and the Aspinall fight, I could definitely see a couple of different ways in which this could go well for Curtis Blaydes. It's not that hard to see. Not saying that will happen per se, but you can understand what that might be. But when you've got the takedown defense of Leon, when you've got the striking accuracy and the patience and everything, it just seems very, very difficult to see what the clear, straightforward path is. But MMA can be crazy. Again, we don't know if these guys are injured. We don't know if they had a bad camp. We don't know if something's going to happen to them on the day where they won't feel great. Again, this fight's going to be at like 5 a.m. There's always things that could make guys get tripped up in ways that you never anticipate. So I don't see an obvious path, but I'm not suggesting that, if Belal goes in there and 48-47 him and you're like, what? Like, I didn't see a path for Sean Strickland versus Izzy, and then he just wiped the floor with him. Like, you have to understand that can happen. It's just, if you're trying to model what it looks like, the best that I can come up with is that he pressures Leon up against the fence, gets the occasional takedown, and kind of wins rounds on work rate and volume with just enough control time, just enough superior, not firepower, but again, volume, and that accumulatively takes him to a place where he gets his hand raised. But do I see him like submitting Leon? No. Knocking him out? No. Choking him out from the back? No. Having his way with him in the wrestling department? No. Right? And so once you close all those doors, you're like, dude, it's a narrow margin that he has to do it. It can be done, but it's not obvious that is really all that accessible. It's kind of the point I would make.
To his credit, Luke, and this is where I want to not be a hater and really tell the full picture. The Leon fight was 3 years ago, not 2 years ago, as I originally said. And you could argue that the 5 best wins of Muhammad's career have come immediately after that. Maya, yes. Wonderboy, Luque, Brady, and then Gilbert Burns. So if I'm going just on the first fight 3 years ago, in which Belal was really unable to get off first and push the pace. Now, would that have changed in rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5? You never know. Sometimes we've seen one-sided opening rounds that did not dictate the rest of the fight. How much can we expect over 3 years for Belal's offense to improve? How much have you seen over those 5 fights where you can imagine? Because I'm going on his words, and his words is, I'm going to go in there and knock Leon out. But Belal's not a knockout guy. He wore down Sean Brady. He did it with clean punching. Credit to him. Eventually, he got him out of there. Is that leap even possible for him to switch the tide so aggressively that he's walking Leon down in this fight?
Well, I definitely think you have to pressure Leon. I mean, if you're not, dude, it's in the big cage too. I think the first one was in the small cage, if memory serves, right? So, dude, if you give Leon Edwards room to move, which means he both has room behind him to get out of the way from takedown pressure, as well as to set up what he wants to do to steer you into punches or whatever he's throwing. That's a tough fucking fight to win. That's a really tough fight to win. It seems much more likely that you're going to have to be in his face. I don't think there's really any question about that, to be quite honest with you. But to the point you're raising, yes, he is 36, but again, 36 is going to be a little bit more forgiving. A little bit more forgiving at 170, but I don't think there's really any doubt he's gotten better since that first fight. I think he's gotten significantly better since that first fight. So has Leon. Leon.
Problem,
that's
right?
That's the problem. It's like it's neither guy has gotten worse or something or stayed the same. Definitely, I think Belal is a much tougher fight than he was 3 years ago. It's just, I think Leon has really come into his own. I mean, Leon is peaking, if ever. And that's the interesting part, too. This was a year from now, too. That's a different fight completely. But right now, I think he's right at the end of his prime. And that's a tough guy to beat. It's a tough guy to beat.
Are there holes in Leon's game at this point, Luke?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones, he's not a dynamic finisher. And the way to understand that is the Nate Diaz fight. So I have a rule in MMA where if you're going to be the kind of guy Leon is, and Leon obviously has done really well. I mean, you can win and defend UFC titles being this kind of guy. But one of the, like, people sometimes fetishize people who have the great finishing instincts, and you don't want to go that far either. But the reality with MMA is, and this is what I learned a really valuable lesson with GSP's career, watching it beginning to end. And the biggest lesson you realize with him, and people are like, why did he go to the wrestling and become so boring? And there was consternation about him towards the end of his run, especially like in the Dan Hardy fight where you felt like the guy was overmatched.
Yep.
There are so many variables of chaos in an MMA fight that the biggest thing that George St. Pierre did was constrain the universe of crazy. Right? There's this giant universe of craziness. And by the way, I talked to Ryan Hall about this when he told me before the Ilya Topuria fight, 30 seconds in, he tore, I mean, not the skin, but the ligaments underneath. His thumb tore away from his hand. So he couldn't even use his hand to grip anymore. That was 30 seconds in. Like, how are you going to win a fight against Ilya Topuria if you can't even hardly make a fist and throw a punch? Like, oh my God, you're in deep shit, you know? GSP realized if you play in a world where all of those variables are open to you, you're just inviting disaster. And it may take longer for disaster to find you, but it will find you. It will find you. If you narrow the scope of what's crazy, eventually a numbers game that will get you too, but it'll be a lot harder to do. Getting on top after taking guys down or using from Turtle in the Nick Diaz fight or something like that, it takes the universe of insanity and makes it much, much, much smaller. And so a guy like Leon still plays a bit of a dangerous game. And that Diaz comeback in that 5th round, it's exactly what I'm talking about. If you let guys, world-class guys, if you let them hang around for 3 rounds, 4 rounds, now 5 rounds, mathematically, that's going to fucking get you. Now, is it going to be this weekend against Belal? We shall see. But it will get him. It will get him in the end. It will get, because it gets everybody. You cannot hide from it. So I do think that there is something to be said for that. No matter if it's Belal or whoever the next opponent is, he's not a dynamic finisher. That's going to give you more opportunity to try shit against him, and mathematically, some of it's going to get through.
That's a fair point. I'll give you that one. What about the strategy here? If you're Belal, Luke, are you looking to? I mean, if I tell you in advance, Belal's going to spend 2 rounds in dominant control with his wrestling, it's a different fight. But if that takedown is not there for him, can he win this fight? And is it going to be more about trying to win rounds if you're Belal, or more about trying to hurt this guy to set up a finish? I mean, obviously everybody wants to do that, but that's not his game.
It's not his game. It's not, again, the Brady fight notwithstanding, it's not really his game. I think you have to put hands on him and control him physically. I just don't. If he averages Belal about 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. So if this fight goes through, 3 rounds, you should have seen already mathematically, statistically 2. Interestingly, the fight went 1 round the first time and he got none. Now he only attempted 1, so take that for what it's worth, but he didn't get it. So, or he was only credited with 1 attempt, I should say. But the point I'm trying to make is, if it's just a striking battle, I don't know what that is. That's just a really difficult. Yeah. If wrestling is a legitimate component of what Belal can meaningfully enact, then that's ball game. He's got a good ball game here. But if there's none of that, then
he's got to
it's hopeless.
Shorten the distance and clinch him against the fence. But it's not something that Muhammad did successfully in their first fight. In fact, it was Leon who's a big welterweight who was driving him back to the fence and using that to try to pop off and set up strikes. Again, Belal has changed since then. I couldn't be more down on him apparently in his chances right now. I'll say that I'm down on his chances to win the fight. I will admit though that I'm not down on his chances to be competitive. And some of that, Luke, is the negative sides of Leon. I mean, Leon had kicked him and had him wobbled and didn't jump in and try to finish him in the first round of their first fight either. It's sort of who Leon is. So I want to see something enough, look, in my opinion, Belal's got to win 2 of the first 3 rounds or it's over, right? That's a fair statement.
Short of a Hail Mary at the end, yes, that is absolutely true. You got to put it on this guy quite early and then make him fight out of a deficit, no doubt about it. And so if he's down the first 3 rounds, it's Doug Flutie time. I mean, seriously, like if you don't have the first 3 rounds in the bag and you're heading into the championship rounds, it's Doug Flutie time. You just gotta wing something
what
and
an
see
old
what
guy
happens.
reference. I like that,
Yeah.
Luke. To Flutie, to Phelan. What was that pass called? What's the nickname for it? Is there one?
Oh, I forgot. Did you ever have Flutie Flakes?
Oh yeah. When he was with Buffalo. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly. All right, BC, let's talk about the fight, if we can. That to me is the most interesting one on this card by a country mile, which is to say it might not be that long either. It might end up being pretty short. In fact, if Tom Aspinall has his way and history is what it is and repeats itself, it won't be very long. Tom Aspinall will be defending his interim title against Curtis Blaydes. They met a few fights ago. It went 15 seconds. There's not much you can read into it. Tom did get hit with some punches, but in the end, it was a knee injury that it was a mess. But here they are back. The last 5 fights, I just want to read it for Tom Aspinall. He has wins over Sergey Spivak, Alexander Volkov. It's a loss to Blaydes, although it's an injury. A win over Marcin Tybura, and then he blew the doors off Sergey Pavlovich. By contrast, Curtis Blaydes got to this point by wins over Jairzinho Rosenstrike, a win over Chris Daukaus, technically a win over Tom Aspinall, a loss to Sergey Pavlovich, but then he rebounded against Jaltin Almeida, although he got taken down 9 times in that contest for whatever.
That was a good win and a good finish. I mean, it was
great. It was very good. Don't misunderstand me.
Yeah.
BC, I tweeted something earlier in the week because I found it interesting, and I should provide more context because people end up suggesting I'm meaning something that I'm not. But I do want to repeat it, which is the first 6 UFC fights of Curtis Blaydes' career, he attempted, I think, 53 takedowns and got 29 of them. In his last 6, he's attempted just 10 and gotten 3. To me, BC, the big lesson that I've taken from this is 2 things. 1, and if you look at the middle 6, he still attempted a lot, but if you remove the Volkov fight, there actually is a reduction already happening before the Derek Lewis fight. But the point I want to make
the Volkov fight was the turning point. No doubt about it.
I would actually say the Derek Lewis fight is the turning point, but they're connected. They're connected. My point is this. 2 things have happened to Curtis Blaydes. Number 1, he has simply gotten more well-rounded. And by being more well-rounded, he's got more tools to use, and he has elected to strike more rather than being like, it's got to be the takedown or I'm in trouble, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is the Volkov fight is 1, but then the disaster that was the Derek Lewis fight, and maybe to an extent the Sergey Pavlovich fight, kind of told him that, because he didn't wrestle enough in that one, but he kind of rushed it. But the Derek Lewis one in particular, that if you force the takedown too much, you're going to run into problems. And in fact, I think the uppercut that Pavlovich used was kind of like related to that to a degree. And so he has elected to wrestle less while his striking has gotten better. My question to you is, do you share this analysis? And also, does this make him much more of a threat against Tom Aspinall, or if sticking with the wrestling would actually be a better option for him?
Well, look, the obvious answer, I think, for him is balance, because I think there's been fights where it's been far too much wrestling. There's been fights where he comes out looking to showcase his hands, and he's just, his striking is weird, Luke. I say that. Sometimes he looks fantastic as a striker, or at least very competent. Sometimes it looks like he's going through the motions and maybe he doesn't believe in it as much. Ultimately, I think the answer is balance. And I do think the Volkov fight, in my opinion, was a big turning point because he spammed so many takedowns in those first 3 rounds. I think stylistically thinking this was an advantage, and it was, but being unable to hurt or finish Volkov, we all remember him really hanging on for dear life over those final 2 rounds as Volkov came on. I mean, that was supposed to be, in a lot of ways, another one of these come up for air moments where Curtis Blaydes climbs the ladder, stops being essentially the sort of elite title keeper to gatekeeper at the title level, and makes his move. I think his biggest problem has been a lack of confident balance in knowing when to use both sides of those games, the ground game, the takedown defense, the takedown game, and the striking. But Luke, the bigger issue to me really surrounds that phrase I just said, when he comes up for air, when he sticks his head above the group at heavyweight and says, I'm ready now for the title picture. Multiple times when he's done that, I've started to believe, I've started to say, look, man, couple fight stretch, he's really putting it together. Very few could match his wrestling at the heavyweight division. He's got great size. He seems to have the right attitude. He trains hard. If he could just raise that striking a little bit. But Luke, when he's come up for air, the results have been disastrous via knockout finish. You know, twice to Ngannou. The second time when he really started to make his first push to looking like a title contender. Obviously, the first fight was weird because Blaydes had a lot of success on the ground and then both basically got his face broken and the corner had to throw in the towel. But we've seen him come up against Lewis, Pavlovich in these fights. And Luke, it's just, I mean, he gets demolished in those moments. Is it a chin issue or are we just talking about super heavyweights with massive power? I'm not sure. But when I look at this fight, he's got to be around long enough to push Aspinall into areas where he's never been before, particularly past the midpoint of the second round. And I think Aspinall, with the speed, combination ability, and what you just noted, knowing that there are times when Blaydes is spamming takedowns too deliberately, too often, I think there's a lot of potential, unfortunately, for this to be yet another Curtis Blaydes moment where he looks ready to crash that party. He's not too old yet. He's still getting better, but he just finds the wrong guy at the wrong time and the boom is delivered. How does he overcome that, Luke? The easy question is just take Aspinall down, but Aspinall's got a good submission game. I don't think he's going to be held down easily. I need to see something completely different out of Blaydes is really what I'm saying, Luke. It's got to be that right level of confidence and knowing how to have that balanced game, because Tom Aspinall has proven against varying levels of very good competition that you give him that one screw up, he finishes the fight. It's over. So I want Blaydes to push this to the championship rounds. I want him to have a shot at fulfilling his destiny because I've always liked Curtis Blaydes a lot. And I think he actually did a great job at the press conference this week for whatever that press conference was. It was very weird. But how am I going to get past this point where I'm expecting him to get finished in the early part of round 2 here, Luke?
So two things that kind of occurred to me. One, for Curtis Blaydes, the reason why I think the wrestling's kind of interesting is if you look at the statistics, Tom Aspinall has a 100% takedown defensive rate, but they've barely tried. And the guys who, I think Sergey Spivak tried maybe a couple of times, and there's maybe somebody else, but hardly at all. Like certainly nobody of the ability of Curtis Blaydes has really like consistently tried to like, hey, let's put it on this guy. Now, again, there's reasons for that. They're getting knocked out before they can even try. That's a big one too, but in general, you've never really seen Tom Aspinall's defensive wrestling, defensive scrambling audited. He's never been audited. And by audited, I don't mean like fraud checked and like, oh, you know, there's a loser underneath all that if you just keep peeling away the layers. That's not what I mean. What I mean to say is like look under the hood and see exactly how this engine runs. We don't really know in terms of the defensive wrestling what the answer to that question is. To me, that's like a big opportunity, it seems, maybe, for Curtis Blaydes. Conversely, though, BC, you go back to the Sergey Pavlovich fight. You're talking about like Curtis Blaydes' striking looks good. Sometimes it doesn't. He doesn't look good pressured. When he's got space and he's doing pressuring, it's very different. When he's getting pressured, I bring this up all the time, dude. I cannot tell you. It's not like boxing. Like, dude, there's a lot of guys in boxing that deal really well with pressure, right? Yeah. Arislandi Lara is a guy that in his day dealt really well with pressure. Dude, MMA fighters often do very, very, very poorly with pressure. Like even good ones, it's not the same level of skill in terms of that particular dimension. But more to the point, if you actually watch the Blaydes and Pavlovich fight, the big takeaway I had was, dude, Blaydes tags Pavlovich like 9 times flush. I mean, absolutely cracks him, and it didn't do shit. He just kind of marched right through it. That didn't happen with Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall put him on his ass pretty quickly. Yeah. Like, and again, I think he covered more distance when he did it, whereas Blaydes was kind of like doing the MMA equivalent of like catch and shoot, you know? So it wasn't quite the same. But nevertheless, the immediate impact was significantly different. And for me, that has to play a role here. I feel like Curtis Blaydes needs to be a little bit between what he was his first 6 fights and then his last one, where definitely don't spam the wrestling. That is a bad idea. But definitely realize you're talking about a guy coming back from a knee injury who really has not been tested by somebody who's got real deal folk style, heavy riding wrestling that's got the ability to do that. I think that that's his best path to victory because it looks to me like on the feet, the foot speed difference of Tom Aspinall, his ability to get into and out of position with his feet very quickly, his ability to cover distance, his hand speed, and his
Dude,
power.
The hand speed's the difference.
Yeah,
the hand
well,
speed
the
has
foot
been the
speed too.
difference.
The foot speed gets him into and out of position. But you're right, the hand speed, dude. All of that combined, I feel like that's a really bad matchup for Curtis.
It's like, Luke, if they were, I would think power-wise, the guys like Pavlovich and Ngannou obviously can land at a much more destructive rate than Aspinall. But Aspinall might be a bigger threat to knock out Blaydes more efficiently than any of those guys. Hard to say that because I think Ngannou in the rematch knocked him out in China in like 45 seconds. But I mean, it's that speed and the combination ability and the accuracy. Yes, it's all set up by the footwork and everything you're saying, but that's the biggest problem for heavyweights, where it may not even be, does Blaydes have a soft chin? I don't think that's true. But when a guy like Aspinall is going to have a chance at close range to put together something like that, it's going to be hard to stand up to that, Luke. So it's like, do you over wrestle him to try to get Pavlovich into the later rounds? Or are you going to worry about gassing yourself out in the process? Luke, I want to ask you, if Blaydes starts to have success taking Aspinall down, even though we don't have the proof, what do you think Aspinall's ability to get up or to be a submission threat from his back, what will that look like?
I don't think he'll be a submission threat from his back. He doesn't have the body type for it. I mean, maybe you could get a guillotine, but he doesn't. You have to be built like Michael Phelps to have a good guard if you're a guy and you're like, you can't be thick-legged and do that. I mean, yes, there are examples of that, but it's not common. I just don't see that as likely. So to me, it's like, it doesn't even matter necessarily if Blaydes can get the takedowns, to the point you raise, which is the scramble ability. Dude, this is what I mean. It's untested. Now, it does seem like a guy like Aspinall, physical prime, right in the middle of it, athletic as shit, well-trained, should be able to deal with it. But it's a bit of an unknown here in all of this. And in fact, Tom Aspinall's kind of spoken about how difficult he thinks the Curtis Blaydes challenge is, even with respect to John Jones. I want to get your reaction to this.
I'm just wondering whether this Saturday night could be a fight of the two best heavyweights in the world.
I think this is a tougher fight than John Jones. Absolutely.
Why do you say that?
Because Curtis Blaydes is a well-established heavyweight Curtis Blaydes is proven multiple times that he's elite. So I think Curtis Blaydes, and he's in his prime. Yeah. He's in his prime. John Jones isn't. So I don't know how John Jones looks at heavyweight. We've seen him in one fight that lasted, a minute, 2 minutes. We don't know how he looks. I think Blaydes is a tougher fight.
He's right and he's wrong, Luke. I like that he has been very respectful of Blaydes' ability. Blaydes can win this fight. Blaydes can become the heavyweight champion. No one's ever disputed that, right? So you have to take that demeanor. But I also think he's right about the idea that, I've been saying it forever, we don't know anything about John Jones at heavyweight. We have that much proof. And then there's a major injury and another year off. And now Jones is 37, which again isn't a big scare at heavyweight. But no, we actually don't know. Cyril Gane had nothing for him in that. But the reason why I say he's wrong, Luke, is Blaydes is not the same fighter as John Jones at any weight class. I mean, no, John Jones is a tougher threat for him in many ways. John Jones can wrestle at the highest level. John Jones is long and can keep you away and has intangible instincts to survive and find ways to win that Curtis Blaydes has never shown at the highest level. So he's right and wrong. I don't hate him for this answer. But Luke, as much as you said, hey, what would happen if Blaydes won this? And you're right, he can win this. I got two questions for you here. They're related. Question number one. If Curtis Blaydes wins, and it's possible, right? Anything's possible at heavyweight. And if John Jones then goes on Twitter and says, after Stipe can't wait to unify against Blaydes, on a 1 to 10 level, how pissed will you be? I mean, you'd be happy that John's hanging around and unifying the title, but it'd be like, oh, you mother effer, come on, right?
Yeah, I don't even know what I don't imagine that is likely. I don't imagine that is likely. You know what I mean?
Right.
That just seems...
Number two then. Should Tom Aspinall, if he does win, get right on the microphone, stop effing around, call out John Jones, disparage him, challenge his manhood, be like, yo, people think you're the GOAT. If you retire without fighting me when this is the obvious fight and you walk away after potentially beating a 45-year-old man who hasn't fought in 6 years or whatever the math lines up to, you know what I mean? We'll know what you really are. Yella. I mean, I know that's ridiculous what I just said, but like, should he do exactly something like that? Because if I was coaching him, Luke, like Ariel once did to DC, Olympic correspondent Ariel Helwani once did to DC, I'd be telling him the same thing.
I don't understand what you mean.
Remember, it was revealed that Ariel had written a lot of DC's biggest call-outs and trash-talking moments, including John Jones, get your shit together.
Yeah, no, I forgot about that, but yeah. I just got some terrible news.
You didn't answer my question though, Luke. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, dude. I just got some really terrible news. So I'm like trying to
sorry about that.
Focus myself. No, I have to save it. I don't. Jesus Christ. When it rains, it pours, dude. When it rains, it fucking pours.
I'm sorry to hear, Luke, about your cryptic reveal there. I'm sorry. I hope it's not a bad personal issue.
No, the sun will shine tomorrow. I don't know how I'll be living, but the sun will shine tomorrow. BC, we talk about like the focus on wrestling.
Well, to answer the question I asked you, he very well should fucking call out John Jones and make this a thing.
Oh, yeah. Right? I just don't know if the market is going to be there enough for that to be rewarded. You know what I mean?
Well, Dana did say when asked at the press conference, is the plan for the winner of this fight to fight the winner of John Stipe? He said, yes, that's the plan. Obviously, it's easy to say that when both of those guys could retire, regardless of the result, right?
Yes. I just feel like unless Blaydes looks incredible and John feels like there's a big and like, I'm not going to say easy opportunity, but like a good opportunity to get something. It just feels totally unlikely. Totally unlikely. Okay. I did want to mention one thing about Curtis Blaydes. He was kind of asked about Alex Poatan going up to heavyweight and what that might mean. And the answer he gave is fairly revealing. Let me play it for you.
Alex Pereira's inevitable move to the heavyweight division.
Bad idea.
Bad idea for him.
I'll give you my premeditated plan. I'm going to shoot immediately. Why would I give him any chance to knock me out on the feet when I know I can take him down at will? And he has to know that. I think he's looking for a specific heavyweight, not any heavyweight. He has matchups against. I could see him beating guys like Tai. We watched him sparring Tai Tuivasa. Maybe some other guys in like the bottom of the top 15. But you give him a top 5 guy with some real weight, he's not winning.
You know, when you mentioned shooting straight away, would part of it be in your mind the fact that he has a devastating flying knee? When we kind of look at the Masvidal
I'm going to eat that
situation.
Knee. I ate one from Alistair. You think he throws harder knees than Alistair? I know he got the aura going on right now, but I ate a knee from 265-pound Alistair. I'm good with eating knees.
So would you welcome
in
Alex Pereira to the heavyweight division if you win on Saturday night?
I know this is what everyone wants to hear. Yes, I would love Alex Pereira. It's not because he's not good. I'm heavier than he is. Just a heavyweight, gravity, weight matters. It's not a skill based. That's just how it is.
That seems fairly reasonable to me, actually.
Yeah, it's the right answer. You should have. The only thing what he said was, you know, he'd have to fight top 50. He's not going to fight. If he's coming to the heavyweight division, he's going to fight for the title, in my opinion, given the aura and the star value that he has at the moment. It very well could be against Blaydes for all we know if Blaydes wins. But yeah, you have to think that way. Why would you try to stand and trade with this kickboxer who has proven so often at any weight class of what he's capable of doing? You better take him down and try to gas him out. I mean, look, is there a chance that a Poatan heavyweight matchup against somebody who can wrestle looks like Blachowicz versus Izzy?
In what sense?
Where we tried to handicap Blachowicz versus Izzy as Izzy going in there and piecing him apart technically with the striking in the same way we're trying to think about, can Poatan raise his game to another weight class and beat these slower guys that same way? Yet that fight was ultimately won by basic takedowns and just top control on Izzy.
Yeah. I think the argument for Poatan at heavyweight is that it's interesting and fun and a long shot, but given the guy's time in the sport, which there's not much. I mean, when I say not much left, I'm not saying he's retiring tomorrow, but you know, he's 37. There's not much of a window left to make the biggest fights imaginable possible. There's a narrow constrained window, and listen, just see what happens. Just see what happens. But not that I think, oh my God, he's got the game to give all these guys problems. I don't really believe that.
The only thing is, Blachowicz really, I'm going against what I just said, but he really used a power jab and some heavy calf kicks to set up all of that. Is there a heavyweight out there besides Aspinall who can put the complete game together? John Jones is one of them for sure, but
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, if Blaydes can't take him, Blaydes may be able to take him down. I mean, I have to say, for that,
What about Gelton Almeida? Like Gelton Almeida might be all over.
But for that
too.
being the biggest weakness of Poaton's game, we thought every fighter would essentially try to take him down. People have had some top control time, but it's not like he's been in deep trouble on the ground against anybody. I mean, maybe that is just speaks to how great he is, the Glover Teixeira effect, whatever. But it's one thing to take a guy down, Luke. It's another thing to make him pay for it at the same time.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. There's limited. Listen, I think is the argument that Poatan can get wins at heavyweight. I don't think there's really a lot of doubt about that. Could he beat the guys he would need to beat in the biggest fights for it to be the most significant? Well, that seems a little long shottish. But the point I'm trying to make is, hell, just see what happens. Try. You know, that's sort of the argument is like, this guy is special. It's unique. It's a moment in time. Just roll the dice. Not that you think there's a great chance. Just roll the dice, you know.
Okay, more likely to happen. Final question. Poatan Izzy 3 for the light heavyweight title, or Poatan moving up to heavyweight after the next fight against most likely Ankalaev?
So you're assuming that Poatan wins at 305, right?
Yes. I'm not necessarily assuming that Izzy wins, but it would make that a lot easier to make that fight happen that way if Izzy beat DDP.
I tend to think rematches have more gravitational pull. I would argue Izzy Pereira 5-3, whatever it is at this point.
6, 7, wherever we're at in the all right.
BC, just quickly on the odds on this one. Curtis Blaydes plus 320, Tom Aspinall minus 410. That seems a little strong to me, but
yeah, but for all the factors we just laid out, it's probably right on. Nobody gets out of the early part of the second round against this guy. Nobody.
Yeah, but somebody eventually will. That's the point.
True.
The point is somebody will. Everybody says this about people, like, oh, everyone gets knocked out. Right. The vast majority of people do. But eventually someone's going to get through that, and then you're going to really see what the next level of the game looks like. And I'm not suggesting to you that Curtis Blaydes is going to be that guy on Saturday. I'm simply saying worth paying attention to. Worth paying attention to. All right. BC. Bobby Green I should say King Green. He has changed his name from Bobby Green to King Green. Is taking on Paddy Pimblett. Our friends at DraftKings have this as basically a pick 'em. They've got Pimblett at minus 105. They've got Green at minus 115. It's a toss-up. Before we get to anything else, I just want to play this clip. It's a little long. We might not play the whole thing, but Paddy's in a weird place. Now, he did make weight, and he looked pretty good, but it apparently is the last fight on his deal. And he was kind of talking about, like, you know, I'm probably going to go back to the UFC, but he would entertain a big money fight with an influencer if it came. But that's really not what I want to focus on. Instead, it was this.
About 5 or 6 weeks ago, my coach was thinking about pulling me out. You know what I mean? Where mentally, I weren't there. And I said a couple of weeks ago, I think this is going to be the worst fight camp of my life. And up until like 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was.
How did you turn it around?
I don't know. I really don't. I've got that attitude, lad, and that positivity where I can turn it around, and you know how confident I am. So when my coach thought about pulling me out, I was like, no chance. Know what I mean? Then you've got to stay confident, lad. You've got to stay positive. Know what I mean? Whenever I start feeling negative and get a bit down, that's when I hit a bit of depression, and mentally, that side of things, it's hard. Know what I mean? As I say, I wasn't in the best place like 5 weeks ago, something like that. I actually messaged James's place, the place where I go to have a little bit of counselling. I actually messaged Jane, the woman who I go and see, and was like, can I come and see you? You know what I mean? Just to have a little chat and feel better.
That's pretty remarkable that you're happy to share this sort of thing with us.
I need to share this, lad, because other people don't. And I'm probably going to mention it again in the cage after a win, lad, because the amount I'm hearing it again lately. Like 2 years ago when I mentioned it, like obviously Andy Mann's club, James's place, all them places said that the surge in calls what they got, and the Samaritans and stuff like that, the surge in calls what they got of people actually speaking up.
How important is it for you that this is a pivotal part of your career, that this is a role you're happy to take on as somebody who's going to speak out and encourage others to speak out as well?
Yeah, that's like people always say to me, "Oh, it's amazing what you're doing, that lad." I'm just doing my part, lad. I think anyone in my position who's got a couple of followers, who's got a bit of a platform, they should be doing this.
BC, obviously, I totally agree with him speaking out and trying to raise awareness for mental health. I think that's all great. But we know the rule. Sometimes you have the Brett Favre game when you're feeling depressed and sad and terrible for good reason. Sometimes it leads to disaster on the sports field as well. I wonder what you make of everything he said here and what it means for Saturday.
I mean, first of all, I want to say I'm grateful that he's willing to share all that any athlete with a platform is willing to share the realities of the human walk that we all undergo. And it's never easy and it can come out of nowhere, right? And people are comparing pictures of him in January, Luke, where he was apparently very overweight, which he often does between fights, but like very overweight, but yet came in insane shape. But to hear it, like he said, like not too long ago, he hit a emotional, wall where the coaches basically asked him if they should pull him from the fight. I want to say this about him in this fight. This may be a virtual pick'em, but technically he's the betting underdog for the first time in his UFC run. It looks like he's going to close at that. He started off as the underdog, ended up closing as the favorite in every single fight. And I think that when you compare the levels of competition of late, there is reason to like what King Green is doing here at 37, going through a poor man's version of his own Masvidalian resurgence late in his career. But I think everything I've seen is really leading me to believe that you need to put all your money on Paddy on this one. Because, Luke, I know his run has been inconsistent, very inconsistent in the UFC. Yeah, he's won all 5 fights, but we all saw him lose to Jared Gordon. Even taking the decision from Tony Ferguson, there's as much good that I saw in there as there's as much troubling. I mean, he's the only guy that wasn't able to finish Ferguson in that stretch where everybody was in the midst of this ridiculously long losing streak, yet he keeps getting booked. But I think one thing that Paddy is, whether or not he ever ends up truly living up to the potential that his commercial value screams, is that I do think he's a gamer. And I do think that if you push him against the wall and you back him up, you will see the best of him. You will see the best of him when the lights are the brightest. It doesn't excuse the inconsistencies of his game or the inconsistencies of some of his performances. But I think this actually is the right setting on home soil, the right opponent, meaning that for as good as Bobby King Green is, King Green and what he did to Grant Dawson was a reminder of what he's capable of doing to anybody. He also has a reckless style, a purposefully reckless style, which welcomes in your offense in hopes that he can counter you so quickly. I think this is ultimately the setup for the exact win that Paddy Pimblett needs to truly break through and get past that whole, oh, is he just a McGregor clone? Look at the floppy hair. Oh, Molly Meatball's on his back again. And now he's jumping the cage and there's Dave Portnoy. Like we went through that era of him already. But I have to say, what I've actually seen out of Paddy since what I thought was his PR low moment, the beef with Ariel and all that went on with that, I've seen a guy who's speaking much more like a human. This was an endearing, humanizing video we just watched. And even though there are concerns to what you said, where sometimes the mental health challenges can lead anybody in any direction, good or bad, I think this will lead Paddy Pimblett to focus and be the best he's been, because he just went through hell in that training camp, Luke. He just fought through a big-time battle. I have to believe there's an element of relief now that he's gotten through it. The fight's still on. He's in great shape. He made weight. And even though I can understand him being a slight betting underdog for all the reasons we just laid out, he's the better fighter with the brighter potential. And I haven't really loved everything I've heard out of King Green this week. He obviously looked he almost looked too happy to be there at the press conference, right? Suddenly it's like, no, I'm fine. We're cool. We're just friends. Isn't it? You know what I mean? Whatever with that. But I see a guy in King Green who is probably hitting his mountaintop in his career. And that's no disrespect. He had been a journeyman who put it together and is dangerous and is marketable now and all that. But Luke, I am being set up here to believe that Paddy's going to bust through in a huge way. And then he might do it by knockout to truly take that next big step to contendership. I saw Jed Meshew yesterday saying if he wins, they'll probably put him against Moicano. Can you make that argument, Luke? I'm not sure, but I think big things are going to come to Paddy. I don't know if he gets to the title level. I don't know if he wins the title, but I think he'll end up getting there with the momentum behind him. And I think this fight has the perfect setup to be that turning point for him. Does that make any sense?
I think it makes quite a bit of sense. I don't know about the Moicano fight. That's a possibility. Again, if he ends up going the influencer route because he wants a big check, that obviously derails everything. I will say for all of these comments, he still seems to have, to me, the same kind of fight week competitive edge. Let me play you a quick clip to evidence some of these claims.
You know, obviously you're fighting Bobby or King Green now. What are your thoughts on the name change? I know you said that you won't be calling him that, but do you think that just kind of speaks to how quirky a character he is in general? Or do you think it's a weird thing? What do you make of the whole thing itself?
Oh, it shows what a dickhead he is. You know what I mean? Like, imagine being nearly 40 years of age and changing your name to King. It's embarrassing, lad. You know what I mean? Grow up, innit? Like, as I've said in other interviews, CTE is real.
Wow.
That's a little strong. That's a little strong, but
heavy-handed response. Yeah.
This is what I mean about, like, sort of, you know, I'm not suggesting to talk about mental health as disingenuous, like being insulting to somebody as part of the fight game, and so that there's an inherent contradiction, but it's an understandable one, I think. So I'm just sort of pointing out, like he made weight. He's saying things that make you think he's in the good place, style, or in terms of to compete. Stylistically, it's a fight he can win. I will say the Grant Dawson win for Green is one that kind of stands out. I don't think Dawson has the same kind of sort of, like, it's both a blessing and a curse. Like, he doesn't have the same kind of striking as Paddy, doesn't have the same kind of striking defensive issues, but also doesn't have that bull in a china shop kind of, you know, ram you back kind of thing either. And so that makes him both more hittable and less at the same time in different contexts. I don't know. It's an interesting one for me. I think, again, the odds are it's a pick 'em. I can see Bobby Green getting taken down and getting his back taken and choked out. I can also see, Paddy's chin has been on a platter waiting for someone to send it into orbit for quite some time. I don't know if Green is that guy, but it feels like it's...
Dude, Green takes way too many chances. I know it's what actually makes him dangerous, but it's what takes him apart. And anytime he looked like he was on a run, I know now he's on a good run, 3 wins in 4 fights, but it's not a perfect run. He hasn't closed up those errors in his game. If anything, he's leaning on them even more to try to create more chaos in a fight.
For the wins themselves, they both have wins over Ferguson. Obviously, the last that Jalen Turner loss for Green was really concerning, but then he came back and he beat the brakes off of Jim Miller, which was pretty actually commendable. Jim Miller is old, we know, but is still a warhorse if ever there was one. And for Paddy, he got the win over Ferguson and the win over Jared Gordon, but that was somewhat controversial, obviously. And then the win over Levitt, and then the other guys are just not really even worth bringing up at this point. I don't even know if they're in the UFC. So it's a situation where, would you agree, BC? Not in terms of like Tony Ferguson, who reached higher highs, but in terms of who he's getting in front of him, this actually might be his best win if he gets it.
I think critically it would give the most. That's why I say I think it's a turning point fight, because I think critically it will lessen a lot of the obvious questions people have about him, whether he's actually there. You mentioned the chin being out. There's a bunch of questions, but to get to the point where he is, there's also some highs that he hits. And it's that, it's that ability to turn it on with the striking and be explosive. It's the toughness. Yeah, his chin's out there, Luke, but he does take a good punch. He is game, so to speak. In a way, after seeing that clip, I'm kind of cheering for him. And I've never been a Paddy guy, but I don't know if it's just, the heart I have for mental health advocacy, Luke, but I hope he does turn it around. I hope King Green makes this a really fun fight, because that's what he does too. And I'm happy for him that he's in this spot and he's able to push himself out there marketing wise as legit. He's in a featured fight on a pay-per-view. He absolutely has earned that with his actions and his swagger, but I actually don't know if he's necessarily on Paddy's level at the end of the day, Luke. I don't know where Paddy ends up. Let me ask you right now, if Paddy does what I'm saying he's going to do, which is win convincingly, does he end up getting to the title level, or do you still have heavy reservations?
Yeah, no. He's not. I mean, dude, what are we? 6 fights into his UFC career, and he still, again, Bobby King Green is a good fighter, and this would be a valuable win. It would show some merit, but like, we're not even bordering on title level at 155.
No, not yet. But are you saying you don't believe it until you see it, or you just don't believe it?
Well, hold on just a second. Let me look up something, and I'll give you a good answer to this. No. I want to do something. Give me just a second here.
Yeah,
I want to pull this up. So Paddy Pimblett was born in 1995. I was in high school. He's 29 years old. So you might be like, oh, well, there's still plenty of time. BC, we're 24 fights into his career. 24 fights. I'm not saying he can't get better. He can get better. What I am saying is if you're basically, he'll be 30 when? He'll be 30 in January. So we're 6 months away from being 30. If you're 24 fights in and you're 30 years old and you're neck and neck with a guy who is, to your point, definitely not in the top 15. I mean, I'm not sure where he's ranked. Actually, I'll look that up too, but I don't believe that he's ranked at 115 or 155. You're just not even bordering on a territory where this is even a relevant question. Yeah, Green's at 15 flat. So this would put him in the rankings. But dude, look at the names above him. Like Moicano sitting at 10, Fiziev at 8, Dariush sitting at 7, Chandler, Gamrot, Poirier. Like,
how about
dude, those
Hooker
are
and BSD?
hopeless. Yeah, those
Hooker,
are
BSD, and Tarantula are in the 10 to 15 area.
hopeless. So no, it would take to me can he like reserve a spot inside the top 15, and that's pretty valuable, sure. But
okay, so you don't even think his star level could lift him to a title shot in let's say a division era where everyone else had gotten their chance and he's left over?
It's possible because of the star power, but I would really wonder what the win would be that he could get inside of there to even make that like squint impossible. Do you remember when people were talking about him and Ilya Topuria fighting? Dude, Topuria would
those were the days, right?
Demolish him.
I mean, unless Topuria is the next Cody Garbrandt, Luke, we're going to find out when he finally fights Max, right?
That sounds like a lot of wishful thinking on your
part.
No,
I don't. I'm not wishing it. I'm just, I'm trying to keep your bone air in a respectable size, Luke. Okay, I'm just really trying to manage the bulge, if you will.
BC, Manel Kopp made weight. Thank God for this fight. That's great. And Muhammad Mokaev made weight as well for this contest, which was on the main card, then the prelims. Now it's on the early prelims in BC. Well, just take a look at this. They were fighting in the hotel.
Do you know the rumored context about how this happened, Luke?
Tell me.
According to the internet, Kopp's team is saying that Mokaev's team walked up to him at the hotel, said like essentially, "Hey, my Muslim brother, let's take a picture together," almost like this solidarity moment. But it was a setup, and as soon as they got ready to take the picture, there was a sucker punch, and the two teams went at it. I have not independently confirmed that. I don't know. If that's the case, Luke, it would certainly seem like a dirtbag move from Mokaev, but I'm not mad that they threw fisticuffs because this gets me even more excited for a fight that is, arguably the third best fight in the card, to be very honest, and certainly has a lot of meaning in this flyweight division in terms of who could be the next title challenger. But Luke, I don't think we can have this discussion. And I know that there's, that rumor out there that anytime we talk about any subject involving the UFC, BC is going to find a way to link it back to fighter pay and contracts. But this is the last fight of Mokaev's deal at age 23. It would seem that he has chosen not to re-sign ahead of this fight to sort of fight his deal out and see what he's worth. Is that the correlation we should be taking here? That the UFC went from putting this as like, a featured early pay-per-view bout to the prelims, to the early prelims. I think it'll be on the Facebook prelims next, preceding Power Slap, Luke, by the time that this fight actually airs. This feels to me like the company saying, hey, 23-year-old future star of this division, you don't want to sign with us, then we're not going to promote you as the next big thing. We'll put you on at 5:27 p.m. when no one's watching. Doesn't that line up with you outside of this fight, Luke?
Seems to make sense. When Arlovsky was leaving the UFC, they buried him on the early prelims to fight Jake O'Brien, a fight he was widely expected to lose. And he won it, which was a big miracle at the time. But yeah, they had buried him. It's the old Joe Silva method. Now, of course, we're speculating. Is that what's happening here? I don't know. Yes. Also, there were, I would say, they made weight, but like they had moved them off the main to the prelims, to the early prelims before the weigh-ins. You're talking about a character in Manel Kopp who's had weigh-in issues before. So granted, didn't happen this time. He made the weight, no problem. But maybe there was a concern that he wasn't going to make it, and that maybe left the fight in jeopardy or something. And they may have wanted to move it down for that reason. That's another possibility as well. We're forced to speculate because we simply don't know.
I wish they were at the press conference, because say what you will about Cop, Luke, and we have, and he can say the wrong thing into the microphone on a fairly regular basis. I think that would have spiced things up. There's legit raw energy between these two. It's already a great fight for what it means to the division. I wish that had happened. Maybe they were trying to diffuse the situation by not putting him on there. Maybe the contract thing is part of it. But let me ask you this, Luke. Contract fight notwithstanding, is the winner of this going to be fighting Pantoja for the 125 belt?
I think if Cop is the winner, or if Mokaev looks outrageous, yes.
Currently, Mokaev is ranked 8th. I'm sorry, ranked 6th, and Cop is ranked 8th.
Yes, but Cop is significantly more title fight ready than Mokaev. I mean, Mokaev's stats tell you everything, right? Mokaev averages 5.75 takedowns per 15 minutes. You're like, oh, wow, that's overwhelming. But then you look, he lands 1.53 strikes per minute. I mean, just anemic punishment that he deals. And you're not going to beat elite guys. You're definitely not going to beat fucking Pantoja like that. Like, no possible way. So
currently it's Royval is ranked number 1, but you know, he's not going to get another title shot soon. Moreno is 2. You can argue he won't without a big win. Then you have Albazi, KKF, and Tatsuro Taira, who are ranked higher than these two gentlemen. So you can make a case for a bunch of those guys. And I think 2 of those guys are fighting each other, if I'm not incorrect, right?
KKF has a fight coming up against
Albazi?
No, I thought it was against the other one. Let me look that up. Sorry. Kai Kara France. Let's see. His next...
Sorry, Luke. He's going to be fighting.
He's fighting Urseg. Yes, correct. I'm sorry about that. Yes.
I mean, if he wins that just as well, he could get the shot. But I guess the point is, at the very least, if Mokaev plans on resigning, this very much could be an important fight in the title picture. There's no question.
Yes, absolutely. And it's certainly, I think for a guy like Cop, who was something of a big signing coming out of Japan, or the Japanese circuit anyway, he would be ready for something like this. But Mokaev, to me, honestly, he's got a lot of ability, and you know, everyone was touting his amateur background, but like, he's still like early stage Curtis Blaydes, where it's like, you know, wrestling at all cost, and there's really not a lot else there to support the game. That's not somebody who can credibly threaten a UFC title holder.
Do you think the fact that Cop lost his UFC debut to the current champion Pantoja would help or hurt his chances should he win spectacularly on Saturday?
Help, because a rematch is always something you could go back to.
Okay.
Help. BC, there's other fights on this card that are worth mentioning, but our friend Arnold Allen taking on Giga Chikadze. Again, our friends at DraftKings, let's see, they've got Allen as a decent favorite, -218 to Chikadze's +180. I like Allen's chances. Obviously, Chikadze comes into this contest having some time off. He had the loss to Cater and then bounced back against Alex Caceres, whatever you want to say. But I will say this for Allen, BC, he's 2-fight losing streak. Now, he had the wins over Yusuf, Hooker, and Cater, great wins. The Holloway fight, he performed ably, but lost. And the same thing with Movsar. He performed ably, but lost. I guess the question is Chikadze of that level or a step down? I don't feel like he's of a Max Holloway level, but he is a tough customer.
Chikadze is a step down, but yes, to what you said, very tough. But here's my question for Arnold Allen, and I thought we would have seen a bigger change after the Holloway fight, in which he had such good moments that time. I thought he raised his game to the absolute title level, showed me, did AA, that he's truly elite despite the injury setbacks and things he's had to go through. I need him to trust in his striking more. I need him to be more aggressive early in the fight and not always trying to rally late. When he rallies late, he puts it together. If there was more of that balance of aggression and kind of just waking up and looking in the mirror, which I'm sure he does on the regular basis anyway, and just be like, man, I'm Mowgli and I'm a badass. If he comes out and brings it to Giga, I think he's going to show us something big here, Luke. I don't think that's an incorrect statement. I didn't expect him to lose the second fight in a row, but I kind of need him to lean on his strengths and showcase them and maybe not be as responsible at times.
I think the issue for me is Allen can sometimes lay back a little bit in fights, and I don't think you can do that against Chikadze. I think you really got to put you got to put him on his heels. You know what I mean? Take him down was one way, but just to put him on his heels. If his kicking game is in play, he's a lot to deal with in cases.
And if all else fails, should he lose 3 in a row? Just call up Pacer and be like, Dad, it's time to gas up, brother. It's time to gas up. All right. Right in the ass. Right, Luke? Right?
That's the path that I'm probably headed down at some point. All right, BC.
Right in the ass, Luke. That path. Is that the
well, I mean, with the TRT, probably, yeah.
All right, I'll inject you with a B12 shot in the ass, like Miguel
okay. I don't need you to facilitate any of that. Thank you. That's quite enough. BC, let's wrap up on this if we can, which is the September 14th is going to be an interesting day. It's supposed to be UFC 306. By the way, I got like a ticket offer because I'm subscribed to some fan newsletter for UFC, I guess. And it said it definitely is Riyadh season UFC Noche. For whatever that is worth. But UFC 306 will be at the Sphere. The same day, Canelo Alvarez at the T-Mobile Arena will be competing. Now, before we get to the opponent part, which to me is incomprehensible, I've seen people dismiss the idea that there's anything to the two events going head-to-head. And I want to be clear. Canelo has enough of a fan base where I don't think it won't sell out. It will sell out in all likelihood at T-Mobile. I suspect the Sphere will definitely sell out, no matter what. I guess we'll see. They do have different fan bases. There's not much overlap to them in that sense. And in fact, there's a way to look at this and say, hey, 2 events going head-to-head, so to speak, in Vegas. The rising tide lifts all boats. It actually won't hurt it at all. But I wonder about that. And the reason why I wonder about that is I do grant that there's enough differences with the fan base that it's not like a make or break kind of a thing, but rather that if the event underperforms, and given who the B side is in this fight, I have a feeling it's going to underperform.
Yep.
And the UFC, if they end up doing what they're doing with this Sphere show, the optics afterwards about how little it looked to have the Canelo experience, about how minimal it was, and how this might be a difficult financial return opportunity for PBC. I don't know. I do feel like it's something of a. I do feel like there's a bit of a risk there. Is there something to that or not?
I'm shocked. I'm shocked at how stubborn Canelo is being, and I get the whole argument that he gives, and that his fans and even those that are trying to be even keeled on the whole is Canelo ducking Benavidez and all that's connected to that. There are some level-headed people in boxing that don't get emotional over it and go, hey, I'd prefer he fought Benavidez, but God, what else would he have to accomplish? I think the argument against the what else would he have to accomplish thing is what we always say. Well, you're the undisputed champion. I guess no longer. I think the IBF is about to strip him because Canelo didn't do that mandatory against that guy that no one that's ever heard of, William Skull or whatever. So whatever, 3 titles or 4 titles, it's still the same argument. If you're going to be the champion and still defend the titles, but actively avoid the toughest fights available and get enabled by the WBC in doing so you don't get the correct mandatories you should. I mean, it's like, what are you doing then? You're hijacking a division, you're preventing big fights from happening, and now you're taking a fight that seemingly no fan actually wants. I don't want to say no fan. If you're a fan of Canelo and you just want to see him, you'll like this. If you're an old school fan of the great Mexico versus Puerto Rican rivalry, I'm sure you can get yourself talked into this, especially if you don't give a damn about the UFC or the Sphere. Hey, Canelo's back, let's watch it. But good Lord, has Berlanga not accomplished what a normal prerequisite should be for a Canelo opponent, for even a mandatory opponent, to be very honest. Yes, he had the flashy 16 first-round knockout streak when he was still with Top Rank. He's got, Fat Joe who hangs out with him. He's got celebrity backing and all that. I'm not here to bag on Berlanga, but when he made that adjustment from that first-round knockout kid to trying to be a contender, even though he's never lost, he's had a lot of sort of setbacks where his performances feel like he's going in the wrong direction. So look at how stubborn Canelo's being. It's not just, you won't force me to fight Benavidez when I don't want to, which is enough of a red flag when you're talking about a guy who, when you are able to combine the ability to be the most popular fighter in the world and having your own era, which is what we are in right now, the post-Mayweather-Pacquiao era is the Canelo era. But obviously in recent years, he's flirted enough with being the pound-for-pound king that when you have that leverage and that control, I'm sorry, more is expected of you. It's why Floyd Mayweather got so criticized by the boxing media for years, because of the control of his own matchmaking. Even though he ultimately did it his way and made sure the right names showed up, I mean, how is this not going to be a stain for Benavidez? And then you add in, fans would be okay if you sidestep Benavidez, if at the very least you made a fight that everybody wants, which is the idea of Bud Crawford at like age 36 or 37, moving up 3 weight classes to take this impossible journey of true pound for pound marksmanship and going in there at Canelo's weight and challenging him. Boxing wants this fight. Crawford told Andre Ward in the launch of Andre Ward's signing with All the Smoke fight in that sit-down interview they did that that's the only fight he really wants. Turki Al-Sheikh, the guy who could pay for it, has said, that is my priority. That's the fight I want to make. And here you got Canelo not only saying no to the Benavidez and Morels, who are have done more than enough to set themselves up for this shot, even though both have had to move up in weight because Canelo won't get off the pot. You're now taking a fight in which you would undoubtedly be the favorite due to the size difference. And Canelo's reasoning of, well, I wouldn't get any credit because Crawford's so small. That might work in other fights. It wouldn't work here. What Crawford did to Spence and the type of what Crawford's flirting with in terms of when he lands this plane and his career's over. He's got a little window left to completely maximize on the Spence fight. I don't like that he sat out a year, but whatever. He'll be back next weekend. We'll see him. But he has an opportunity in a short window to make special fights that can elevate him to a level of greatness that I'm not even sure we're prepared to talk about. Like, what if Crawford went up there and beat Canelo? You're damn right, Canelo, you would get respect if you went in there and beat Crawford right now because of the guts he has that he's willing to do this. So I don't want to hear that argument either. But yeah, Canelo's boasting me like, I'm not going to do plan A that you guys want. I'm not going to do plan B that you guys want. And on top of that, I'm going to fight a guy who really doesn't deserve to be here. And I'm going to go head to head against the UFC sphere in some stubborn action to try to prove to you guys that Mexico holidays in Las Vegas are my dates and have always been my dates. Come on, Big Red. Come on. I mean, Luke, come on. What is he? I saw early lines. He's like a minus 1,500 favorite. It's going to get bigger by fight night. Watch Berlanga's tape. He would have needed to go through somebody like a Caleb Plant to have really earned this opportunity, but he hasn't. Patrick McCrory, these aren't the names that get you this type of fight. Canelo's doing this because he is so ardently stubborn to show us that he has the control. Yes, you do have the control, Canelo. You earned it. I don't like saying negative things about you. I've respected almost everything you've done in your career because you've done it with intention, purpose, class, and a respect for the game. But if you're going to hold on and to hoard these titles and avoid everybody, and kind of set yourself up for this tough task, which is how do we live up to what's going on across town with the UFC Noche? It's a bridge too far, Luke. I think he's setting himself up for critical disaster. I hope not commercial for him and the PBC's sake. I like when boxing's on fire. I like when people are trending upwards. I want all the business to do well. Dude, if you don't want to fight Benavidez, ultimately that's going to be your cross to bear with your own legacy. But fight Crawford right now. That's the damn fight to make, not this guy. Luke, are you now going to tell me that he's just holding out because he wants that real big Turki Al-Sheikh bag, not the 75 million one, but the 100, 150, 200 million dollar one?
Why would you care about that bag when you're going to you get a guarantee of 35 million to fight Edgar fucking Berlanga, dude? You know what I mean? Like, the thing is this, I love Canelo, and if they want us to cover the fight, I'll cover the fight. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. Fine. Like, I'm not going to sit here and badmouth them, but I don't think PBC is going to make money on that fight, dude. I really, really don't. I really don't. I don't think that, Mexican Puerto Rican rivalry. Okay. But like, this is not Cotto Margarito. That's not what this is. This is not what
not even Cotto Canelo. This is not even anything close to that.
Yeah.
You know?
So to me, it's like, dude, you didn't want to dock him for the Munguia fight. You have to dock his pound for pound placement with a fight like this. You have no obligation but to do that.
You have to.
And to me, it's like, even if you win, you lose your place in the pound for pound based on the fight you're taking. You're probably not taking the right fights, at least not for what the fans and boxing more generally want. But also, I just wonder if it ends up being like this, like, why did we do this kind of a thing? And the UFC has this like spectacular extravaganza. The optics of what that will look like, I feel like will have a ripple effect that people aren't really fully appreciating. But I guess
Well,
we'll
is
have to
he
see.
not-
We'll have to see how it goes.
Is Canelo not remembering the last time that I can remember that he aggressively went head to head with the UFC? Maybe I'm forgetting another fight where it also happened. But
It
I
was
say
the
aggressively.
Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz one. Remember?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
talking about. He
the Kovalev.
aggressively went head to head with the BMF fight when he fought Kovalev, and that was a big fight against Kovalev. I was given the choice by CBS. I chose that fight because he was moving up to light heavyweight, fighting an old killer. And as we all know, DAZN chose to wait out the end of the BMF fight, which I watched from inside the MGM Grand Garden Arena on the big screen. Who can forget those pictures of Canelo and Kovalev on the couch just waiting? I would think that was enough of a bad stain PR to not want to do that again in general, unless you have the right opponent where you just say, look, I don't care about them on the other side. It's about this fight. This is not the right fight where you can say that. Luke, why is he being so ultimately? You tell me. Ultimately, why is Saul being this stubborn?
I think he believes rightly he's got enough of a fan base now that after the Bivol fight, he doesn't have to take as much risk. And with the guarantees he's got in place and with the fan base he's got, there just really isn't much of a need to take the risk anymore, especially since I know he got stripped by IBF, but in general, the sanctioning bodies aren't really willing to penalize it at all. Why bother?
They want their cut. I want to say, I really enjoyed the tweet. Cliff Rold, who has been I know he's doing his own Substack now, but he's been a long time boxing scene writer, just one of those hardcore authorities on the small weight classes, on rankings, on everything. He came out and said, look, Floyd has never had a pay-per-view opponent this bad on paper. And a lot of people say, hey, what about Conor? Not comparable, different type of fight. And then people are going, what about this guy and this guy? We're talking about at the time the fight was made. At least Carlos Baldomir was the lineal welterweight champion who had just upset Zab Judah. At least Arturo Gatti was a future Hall of Famer and action star. At least Robert Guerrero had just, beat Andre Berto in a welterweight title fight. I mean, there's levels to controlling your own matchmaking. But Luke, I think he's right. I don't think Floyd has tried. Maybe Andre Berto at the time he fought him, but he was also 37, 38 for his final fight of his career at that point. Berto came in with a 3-3 record in his last 6, but at least Berto is a former welterweight champion at that point. Berlanga hasn't done anything yet. So this really is, it's tough. It's tough to swallow. I don't like bad talk in boxing decisions when these guys are putting their lives on the line, but this is just not in line with what's out there. And Luke, the follow-up news that came out of this was Samson Lukowitz, the promoter of David Benavidez, putting out there that Benavidez is now going to stay exclusively at 175, and he's getting himself in line to fight the winner of Beterbiev versus Bivol early in 2025. And you know what? Maybe that's the right choice, Luke. No use in waiting around anymore. Make Canelo come to you. If it's going to happen, Canelo's going to have to go back up to 75 and chase him.
Yeah, it's not happening. It's over. It's never going to happen. I'm firmly convinced they will never ever fight. Never.
What will we say about this in 15 years?
Well, after the show, I'm just going to go get into the bathtub and then throw a toaster in there. So you'll have to carry that mantle by yourself.
I mean,
I gotta tell you, bro. I'm just going to level with you in the audience. This, not counting the year or two after my mom died, this has been the worst year of my life.
I hate to hear that.
Not counting that. Not counting that would obviously was a level so far beyond even what I'm experiencing today. But just the news that I got now and what I've been dealing with, I'm struggling, dude. I am barely hanging on, bro.
We're gonna get through. I appreciate and respect everything you're going through, and it's been a rough year. There's no doubt about it professionally, but we will get through this, Luke. I don't know what you're facing right now, but the MK Nation, for what it's worth, Luke, we got your back. You're going to get through this. We got this. Come on. We got this. All right. Brighter days ahead. All right.
I don't know about that, dude. I really don't anymore. I don't know about that.
This too shall pass. We got this, Luke. Okay. Spring always follows winter, Luke. Even this year, you know that deep inside. All right.
Yeah. All right. Buy our merch. Here, hold on. Here's the lower. Buy the merch, or don't. I don't know if it even matters anymore.
Yeah, or don't. I mean,
here's our social. You can follow us there, and yeah, I don't know what to say, BC. I don't know what to say anymore.
You know what really matters at the end of the day, Luke?
Your
health. Okay, your family, your happiness. You got this. All right.
We should
Quit
remind
drinking
folks I'm
Monster
going to be on
Energy.
vacation. I'm going to do Monday's MK. I'll be in New York for Monday's MK post
Oh, yeah.
304.
I don't want to say the name, but because Randy Couture might not show up again on Monday at noon, or Andy Ruiz, but we did book my favorite active UFC fighter for Monday's show, did we not?
Yeah, I mean, whether or not they'll show up is entirely
okay. I did book Chuck Mindenhall for your vacation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then, so the August 5th show, I will not be there. The August, I think it's 12th, I will do remotely. I will do that remotely.
And then I missed the one after that. I
And then
missed
you
the
missed
one,
the one
the
after
19th.
that,
I
so-
missed one when I'm in London.
It's
yeah.
the only vacation I've taken this year. So I hope
I don't care if
that,
it's your 7th, Luke. Live your life. Chase after happiness. This job will take care of itself, okay? It will.
Yeah, I don't know about that anymore. All right. Well, I've got to go eat a bullet. So
Well, Luke, like that shooter in his final moments,
be
there's
very
one.
careful. Be very careful.
There's one place you can go on the internet, Luke. No, don't go there. That place is dark and disgusting. Don't go there, okay, Luke?
Yeah, man. This has been the worst year of my life in 20 fucking years, man.
Guess
20
what?
fucking years.
2025 is going to be the best. I will make sure it is, Luke. Okay.
Hope you're right, dude, because I don't believe that anymore. So
I mean, listen to what Hulk Hogan said that time. Oh, wait, sorry. He said the N-word. Do not listen to that at all, Luke, at all. All right. All right.
All right.
I mean, Luke, lube up if you got issues, right? Just lube it right up. Just
All right, man. That's it for us today. We do appreciate you guys watching. As a reminder, I will have a post-fight show on my YouTube channel for UFC 304, and then Monday's MK 304 reaction and everything else.
And a
It'll be
special
big.
guest.
It'll be fun. And
big
alleged special guest. Whether they post, God only knows, right, BC? God only knows.
Yeah. That was a great song by the Beach Boys off of Pet Sounds. God only knows. Great song, Luke.
It's a good song. Pet Sounds a great album, by the way.
Yeah.
BC,
Oh,
any
look at
final
us.
thoughts?
Look at us right here getting along. This is great, Luke.
Any final thoughts, BC?
Man, you should get into painting, Luke. Look what it's done to me. I mean, this is great, right? Look, is this a train, a boat, or is this like, is that a Vegeta? I don't know. Luke.
Can't be a train because Osborne's not in it. So you know what I'm saying?
There we go. There it is. There it is.
All right. We're gonna get out of here. We'll see you guys on MK on Monday. Join us then. That's BC. I'm LT. Until next time, boys and girls. May all your gains be loyal. Bye.